Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Stevens, and I analyze the rates of asthma by household median income for census tracts within the proximity of the Salton Sea for my final project, using GIS, of course. So, what is the Salton Sea? Well, in 1905, there was a routing accident along the Colorado River for the agricultural sector there in Imperial County, where there was a huge amount of water inflow into the Salton Basin in that area, and this continued for 2 years because they couldn't repair the route that was damaged. And it was thought that the Salton Sea would dry up naturally because it wasn't, like a natural lake, but it actually remained and was sustained by agricultural inflow from the surrounding farmland area. And this led to it becoming a booming resort town in the 50s and 60s, kind of similar to like Palm Springs in a lot of ways. It's sort of thought to be like the next Palm Springs. It was a really big like vacation hub. Another crucial hub that it became was for sustaining migratory bird populations, where they like to stop at the Salton Sea and they like to eat all the fish there as they're migrating across North America. And this has huge implications for sustaining bird diversity throughout North America, and it's a really crucial hub for it. It also became heavily polluted over the course of the 20th century and has recently begun to dry up as well due to some issues with water agreements in the area as we've been facing drought conditions. And it became polluted because of all the agricultural inflow as farmers started to use more pesticides and more manure. It started to lead to a process called eutrophication, where there was an excess nutrient buildup in the sea, and led to algal blooms that resulted in deoxygenation um, in the sea itself, and that killed a lot of the fish life that was there. Like if you go to the Salton Sea ever, there are literal beaches made of fish bones there. It's quite scary, and a huge concern for local communities there is the low air quality generated from like the downturn of the Salton Sea as it dries up, and you get like dust storms that scatter all this like sulfuric air around, and it's led to a lot of concerns about that. So I wanted to investigate, like using GIS, an actual map view of this phenomenon. So if we look at asthma rates in surrounding census tracts, I used the shapefiles provided by Simply Analytics for California asthma rates. And then after projecting my map using the project tool to the 0406 projection, I created a polygon outline of the Salton Sea myself, as you can see here in the editor toolbar using the imagery-based map as reference. And for my first map here, I extracted the census tracts that were above the state average for percentage of adults with asthma using the select by attribute tool. And I created a new layer using this and differentiated all of these tracts into 7 different categories, as you can see, with the red and orange ones being higher rates of asthma. And we can see that a lot of the surrounding census tracts here from the Salton Sea are like above the state average for asthma rates. For my second map, I did the same process as I described before, but for state census tracts that were below the state median household income level. And I used median because median household income is so skewed up, or average household income is so skewed upward in the state of California. So I thought this would be more accurate. I also I had to do this by going into the datasets attribute table and hitting the explore statistics button to find the median. And I used the pairwise clip tool with my previous data set on map 1 to clip out census tracts that were both above the state average for asthma rates and below state median household income level. And in this way, you're able to investigate the disproportionate effects on the poor in the surrounding region by the Salton Sea's sulfuric air quality. And some conclusions that we can draw from this process are that census tracts surrounding the Salton Sea exhibited some of the highest rates of asthma in the state, and many of them were also above the state average median rate for asthma while also being below the state median household income level. And this again just highlights the disproportionate impacts on lower income Californians by the Salton Sea that live around that area. And ultimately, however, it's just kind of hard to prove correlation here using this data set because the resolution of this data set for the census tracts was pretty low. The individual tracts were pretty large, and I would have preferred having a more coarse, fine-grained data set to work from. And you especially can't prove causation from this just alone. It would require better statistical analysis. But I felt this was a really good way to visualize the specific phenomenon in this issue. Um, so even though there's better work that could be done, I thought that this was like pretty useful to actually visualize the disproportionate effects on poor Californians in this region from the Salton Sea and how asthma rates are just spiking because of Salton Sea's low air quality. All right, thank you so much.